everyone, and welcome back to the news, where there's quite a lot to cover because Activision Blizzard have had an incredible quarter. Bobby has in fact went and 69'd one of his most important metrics for the year, and the way the wind is blowing for the company is pretty darn clear. Also, Todd Howard has talked a bit more about Bethesda, Starfield, the Elder Scrolls, and the future of some more multiplayer-only games. Gaben is sending a garden gnome into space, and a whole bunch of other things as well. Of course, if you want to support the team doing all this stuff, bunch of things. Bam, we have got the 2020 logo pin, which is going to be on Patreon, along with the art pack of Patreon for this month. And there also is going to be another pin. It just has not arrived in the office yet. So, lots out in the Patreon. It's the best way to help us out. And you also get a bunch of cool shit in return. Okay, let's go. Okay, so Activision Blizzard recently posted their financial results for the quarter, and, well, revenue is up year on year across Activision Blizzard and King. What I think really matters, though, is that Activision and King posted record Q3 operating income. Now, of all this, the one thing that we really want to highlight for you today is something that will be obvious but is important: microtransactions. So the financial report refers to in-game net bookings, that's microtransactions, bringing in 1.2 billion this quarter. Now, that's a lot of money, and it's up from 709 million this time last year, which is a 69% year-on-year increase, which is sure to make Bobby pretty happy because, and this is an important thing to remember, those microtransactions are they are the highest margin thing that these companies can actually do, right? Now, ActiBlizz's combined revenue across all their business areas was then 1.95 billion, and that does mean that microtransactions accounted for more than half of Activision Blizzard's total Q3 revenue. That is absolutely major. And when you say, if you're a World of Warcraft player and you look at why there are the store amounts and the 6-month deals that come in and all of those things that happen in the game, it all makes sense. If you're a Call of Duty player and you're thinking, what is up with the Warzone and all that business model, yeah, this is how it works, and it clearly is working. A 69% year-on-year increase in probably the most profitable segment of their business. That is absolutely massive. I mean, what businesses normally get 69% year-on-year growth in a segment like that? Yeah, this stuff's really growing. I mean, it is kind of funny. Just in yesterday's video, we covered Genshin Impact in a single month, getting $250 million in the same type of revenue. So it is actually pretty incredible how just outside the success of Genshin is a 500 dev team, 100 million budget being able to get that kind of returns versus then you look at what Activision does. Yeah, I suppose if Call of Duty had cute anime girls that came from gacha pools, maybe Bobby would make even more money. Okay, next up on that, Call of Duty is still a juggernaut, a highlight of their report. Their console and PC in-game net bookings were 4 times higher year on year. That's massive. Modern Warfare's year one sales were the highest in the franchise's history, 2/3 of which were digital. And we're not going to get fully into this today, but generally, going through all the quarterly reports that have happened, that shift to digital has just been increased and increased. I'd imagine the pandemic would also have increased that digital shift. Remember, digital sales are higher margin. It's what these companies want. So yes, this is a pretty incredible time to be a AAA publisher. Now also, COD Mobile. It is in the final stages of testing in China with 50 million pre-registered players to date, which is pretty damn big. Now, speaking of mobile, they also recently said that basically, yes, and this is something they've said in a few earnings calls, but they reiterated that they want all of their franchises to have a mobile element and to get onto mobile. You can see that with Blizzard stuff. Don't know how they're going to get Overwatch mobile, but you can certainly see that this is all going to be happening. I think there's another Crash mobile game in the future as well, so that all does make sense. Now, there have been some things they've been doing in the realm of excellent video games. I mean, there were a couple of mentions of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 Remastered. That was an absolute banger of a project, a massive success, and Activision said that its success and acclaim highlight the opportunity for their rich library of classic franchises, which absolutely does bode well, right? I mean, let's think about some other things. Crash did super well. There's been rumblings of there being a new Spyro in the works. We've got Tony Hawk doing really well. So yes, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to resurrect a lot of that back catalog. Now, also, of course, we need to talk about Blizzard. World of Warcraft franchise engagement is at its highest point in a decade. And that's, of course, in the run-up to the Shadowlands expansion, which, by the way, has also got record pre-orders. Now, on that, Bobby Kotick said that the unprecedented engagement trends, as he puts it, have contributed a lot since WoW Classic doubled the game subscriber base last year. And I do have to wonder, how many of those people brought back by Classic are generally just wanting that WoW hit and therefore are more willing to go into Shadowlands? Certainly Shadowlands is removing a few things like Titan Forging that the Classic-oriented audience really would not have liked, so maybe it will trend better amongst those Classic players. But that said, Shadowlands really has had its issues. I've, of course, been covering it since Alpha on our other channel, and that is an important thing. I mean, it's their second biggest franchise. It is super important. Now, there's a bit of me that wonders if they know they cannot cock up World of Warcraft much more than they have been doing recently. Now, I think Shadowlands is a big step in the right direction in a whole bunch of ways, but Battle for Azeroth was an absolute disaster. The narrative was absolute pants, right? And I mean, it's Blizzard, so they're all over the place in narrative, but the BFA one was one of the shockingly worst told stories I've seen in terms of pacing and focus, character work. I mean, they did have their nice moments, but it's very telling that the successful moments of that game's campaign actually happened in cinematics and books, things that were outside of the game. So they cocked that up massively, and then they almost, I mean, they're going to hit a few issues, but they've been sidestepping loads of design issues in Shadowlands that I would say are just blindingly obvious traps that are absolutely the sorts of things that the World of Warcraft design team run into. And I've long said the World of Warcraft is a game with a lot of fantastic designers, absolutely incredible artists and all that stuff, and it's constantly let down by their systems designers. And I'm not even that diplomatic about it anymore. That's the one thing that has been damaging World of Warcraft the most for years. And that segment, whoever's making that game, needs to wind their neck in and actually just, I think, approach things differently. Now, on that, we did notice two very interesting things recently. Very recently, they've got a new lead encounter designer, so I think that's decently major, and that lead encounter designer had worked on other pretty good stuff in Blizzard before that, and they've moved David Kim. Now, David Kim was high up in, of course, StarCraft 2. He was then on Diablo 4 in a very major role, and now David Kim is the principal game designer of World of Warcraft. So that, I think, is a fairly major reshuffling. And I don't know if this is them replacing anyone, but certainly it's two major roles and fresh blood coming in. And I have just found, personally, that there's been a stagnancy and a lack of a willingness to change and be daring in the design ideas from a systems point of view going into World of Warcraft. So I think some fresh blood there, absolutely something I want to see. Okay, Overwatch. Surprisingly, it's been doing okay. It's had 10 million monthly active users this quarter, and, shockingly, the Overwatch League 2020 finals were the most watched in the league's history. Now, you may say shockingly if you've been keeping up with some of our reports in the past, though. We've basically said that the shift to digital forced them, or sort of prevented them from making some of the format mistakes and stuff like that they had done in the past that made the league such a drag. So maybe it's going in a better direction. Certainly the team owners will be happy with that, because from what I understand, they were not particularly happy with their purchases. Okay, Hearthstone is also apparently performing quite well. From what I hear, its balance is in a better place than it has been in a long time, and they've found that their hours played are up year on year for this quarter. And also, Diablo Immortal is hitting external regional testing soon. I actually can't wait to see what that's going to be like and play it, because it's just such a situation, right? So it will be interesting. Now, also, there is one last piece of Blizzard news, and that is that Blizzconline, as they call it, is going to be absolutely free. Now, it happens February 19th to 20th, and we'll probably hear some Diablo 4, we'll probably hear some WoW patches, some Hearthstone content, of course, Overwatch 2, I think that'll probably be the star of the show. But what was really interesting to me is they're not making money off it. Now, usually they do the $40 virtual ticket, and that virtual ticket, that's incredibly high margin, because what they end up doing is they throw in some World of Warcraft stuff, like some mounts, some transmog for your character, and a lot of people actually do get the BlizzCon virtual ticket, a little bit for BlizzCon, but also for all the in-game stuff. So I'm really surprised that they're actually giving up that line of revenue, but there you go. Jab said in a statement that it's going to be a big virtual celebration, and I suppose it's good that it's free. Certainly, that should get more eyeballs on it, and if they do have big announcements there, then yes, they will want that. I mean, Blizzard has not had particularly good news, so a free BlizzCon that then has got a bunch of good news, I think that's just what they would need to get people a little bit more positive on them. Okay, next up, some more quickies from Todd Howard. So, he said that Fallout 76 basically hasn't put them off the idea of doing more multiplayer-only games. And you might shudder at that, but he did actually say that basically they let a lot of people down. They're overall positive about Fallout 76 as a project, and they think that the work needed to turn it around with Wastelanders actually made them better developers. So it's interesting. He did say that, in reference to 76, that he can't say it's going to be a one-off. So probably more multiplayer games in the future. And I'll certainly say this. If you could get a sort of pseudo-MMO multiplayer Skyrim, I mean, that is a very different game to what ESO is. And I think that would absolutely be a good, interesting thing. It's just, can they not make all of those same mistakes again? Hard to say. And I suppose the question is, if they've learned those lessons, what will that mean? Will it mean that it will actually, say, an Elder Scrolls Online, an Elder Scrolls made by Bethesda in-house online, the same way that 76 is what it is, would that be a game that would have some of those very annoying microtransaction sort of time savers, and then have the Wastelanders thing of having, like, single-player content and stuff be shipped with it? Hard to say, really. Now, speaking of other Bethesda projects, he did drop some Starfield and TES hints. Basically, he said that Starfield will be entirely single-player, and that both Starfield and the next Elder Scrolls are using a developer and procedural generation, and that's basically to enable larger game worlds, and that is a part of the creation engine overhaul. Now, it's an overhaul, of course, that many of us do think they really needed to do. Now, a lot of people hear procedural generation and they get a bit worried, right? Because usually you hear that, you're thinking about a roguelike, or you're thinking about, just stuff like that, So here's the deal. It's not player-side random generation, so it's not like, you go to a new planet, it generates stuff like No Man's Sky, nothing like that. Basically, this is development tools, right? And procedural tools basically will be a force multiplier on what a single developer can do. Let's say you want to make some terrain. Well, with procedural tools, you're far more able to just block it out and have a lot of the details just filled in for you. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't then go in and do a whole bunch of work, but it does actually save a massive amount of time, and the time that it saves is a lot of what you could sort of call busy work, right? It's just getting things set up. So, you save that time, then you got more time for the good creative stuff. And if you want to have more of a look into this, I'd recommend actually going onto the Unity Asset Store or the Unreal Engine Store and taking a look at some of the terrain tools there. That might be able to give you a bit of a handle of what those things are like. Then also we did say that cities will be large and expansive compared to previous games, which I'd certainly be excited about. I mean, come on, you go through some of the larger cities in Witcher 3 and they're really impressive. Seeing that be done in an Elder Scrolls, I think that'd be pretty exciting. Now, while we don't know about the size of stuff for Elder Scrolls, we do know that Starfield is going to be bloody massive. In terms of development resources, it has 4 to 5 times more developers working on it, and that's from their studios in Dallas, Maryland, and Montreal. So that's big, but it's going to be far away because Todd did say it's going to be a while before we see it, and he does not feel comfortable talking about it. So there you go. What we do though know is that Starfield and the next TES will be on Xbox Game Pass from day one. So even if they can sell them in the PS5, it's still going to be a default win for Microsoft in terms of getting people onto Xbox. Because, yeah, you sign up for Game Pass and bam, you get it instantly. All right, next up, remember the MikeZ story? He was the CEO of the studio that did Skullgirls. There was all the allegations against him. Well, around the same time, ArcSys brought him on to work on some stuff. And they brought him on, they say, in the assumption that he would eventually resolve the allegations against him. And while ArcSys have got a strong policy not to condone the sorts of things he was doing, they said he was hired to ensure a good user experience. So basically, right, they had a job they needed done, and they thought that he was the man for the job, even though all of those allegations were there. And basically, they've now hit their development milestone, and MikeZ has been cut loose. And yeah, that's essentially what's going on there. I mean, my personal read, they say cut loose to start working towards a resolution, but basically my read of the situation is they needed him for his skills or whatever he was going to bring to that, and even with the allegations, but now they don't need that anymore, he's away. So, a strange situation. Okay, let's move on for more news. So, cloud games and Switch, right? We talked a bit about it. Of course, Control and Hitman 3, they would not really be possible without streaming gaming on the Switch that couldn't be ran locally, and we've since heard that Ubitus, the company who's in charge of the Control and Hitman releases, have said that they're working with numerous industry-leading game developers to bring more titles to the Switch. So, I guess expect more big ports for the Switch, and if you could have a situation where the Switch could almost be like a little streaming box, then that could actually fit a niche for some people. I'm just not particularly sure the full purchase upfront business model would actually work for that. Alright, next up in terms of games, something for you to watch out for, because the N7 Day, which is the sort of Mass Effect celebration, is happening this weekend, and many of us are expecting a Mass Effect Trilogy remaster. It's been rumored for months, we've covered it on the channel, and hopes are being bolstered because there is a special panel that has Jennifer Hale and Mark Meer, that's the two Shepherds, as well as Kimberly Brooks, Steve Blum, and just loads of other people in attendance. Basically, the original Normandy crew is going to be there. So, are they going to be there because there'll be a big announcement of a Mass Effect trilogy? I wonder. I mean, the last rumor did point to a February 2021 release date, so fairly interesting. And then finally, a fun little tidbit where Gaben is just sending a garden gnome into space via New Zealand. So that's what he's doing, and that harks back to the Half-Life 2 Episode 2 Little Rocket Man achievement, where you basically carried a garden gnome through the entire game and put it in the rocket. And this stunt is in collaboration with Rocket Lab, who are a New Zealand rocketry startup. They basically specialize in small payload rockets. They're trying to fill a bit of a gap left by the likes of SpaceX. And Gaben's going to throw a garden gnome in one of them, and for every person who watches the launch and stream, he's going to be donating $1 to the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit at the Starship Children's Hospital in Auckland. So, pretty cool. Now, some of the context here is Gaben seems to love New Zealand. Now, as we've covered before, he's been doing the media junket there, and he has said that he's considering moving some production resources over there. I think a lot of that is because New Zealand is, I think through a combination of them getting the reins on it pretty quickly and them, I guess, being pretty far away from the rest of us, they've been able to deal with COVID pretty well. So I wonder if that's a reason why Gabe is now looking at this place and thinking, I should move my production resources there. I mean, he pretty much did say that. Okay, there we go. That is it for the news. My God, I hope you like Activision Blizzard stuff because, Bobby's he's sort of a reliable villain, right, sometimes, but I mean, it certainly is interesting to see the stuff work, and it is very instructive, teaches a lot about what we should actually be paying attention to. Speaking of which, do you want to pay attention to these things when they're on your wall, or maybe this when it's on your lapel or your bag? So Patreon. Of course, one of our tiers is a big old monthly bundle of merch from the art team who reside through that door, which actually is not in frame. But yeah, you can get that, get some cool stuff. Also supports us a great deal, and it all goes back into running the channels better. And should be more on that because I've recently revamped some of our internal, workflow and how we work, and I'm expecting good things to come from that. Anyway, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will see you next time.